Welcome to Tech Tales with Ben Tchoubineh. This is your front row seat to the stories behind today's most innovative tech leaders. Each episode dives deep into the journeys, challenges, and victories of those shaping the future of technology. From startup struggles to breakthrough moments in seasoned leaders' lives, grab a cup of coffee and join us as we uncover the human side of tech, one story at a time.
Yeah, I hope I set this thing out right correctly. I'm 54. I might forget things all the time. So I'm just like looking around just to make sure if I set this thing up correctly.
It
Anyway,
says recording, so
it
hopefully we're
says
good to go.
recording. It says recording. I hope I have got my ears. I mean, your sound is in my ears, but I hope it's being recorded. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, I'm new to all this. In any case, I'm so happy you're here, man, because not that I've had many guests. You're my guest number 5. Yay, 5.
Amazing.
When I get to 10, it'll be like a big party. But you're also my very first AI-focused guest. I come from cybersecurity training, so a lot of my guests in cybersecurity in some way or another. Compliance, I'm big on compliance, so there's guests on compliance. But AI is like the big thing. So you're like the founding person in when it comes to the AI, AI talk. Because, it's technology and AI is the big conversation these days. And one of my major concerns as an entrepreneur, I want to start an AI company. What am I going to do? What kind of company am I going to start? Because it's changing all the time. And I feel like you have found the genius solution. Doesn't matter what the software is going to do. Doesn't matter what the latest innovation is going to be that's going to kill a bunch of companies, right? Because you're providing the infrastructure. You're providing the hardware necessary for this to happen. And I think that's just genius. I love it. This is Dave Senior Jr., one of the greatest names on the planet. David Senior Jr. So your dad's David Senior, right?
Dave Senior, that's correct.
Okay. So, Dave, first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
First of all, we're friends. I mean, just
yeah.
FYI, the first guests are always your friends, right? Hopefully I'll be able to attract people I don't know. But I'm so happy to be your friend because you're just one of the smartest people I've ever met. And today we're going to try to discover where all this comes from, all this amazing intelligence and hard work and dedication and awesomeness. You are the CEO, co-founder, and project director, or as you would say, project director, because you're Canadian, of Neural Edge Solutions. Tell me what Neural Edge Solutions does.
Neural Edge Solutions provides AI custom solutions to companies that want to keep their data secure, based out of our data center here in Ontario, Canada. So as you mentioned already, Ben, and again, thank you so much for having me to chat about this today. AI moves so very quickly, right? How do you know what the next biggest, large language model, the biggest use case is going to be when everything moves, not even weekly anymore, but like daily, right? Like it's so fast. So as you mentioned, our big play was getting our hands on some top of the line hardware. So we're currently running 20 NVIDIA H100s out of our secure data center. And we've got all of that levels of security needed to kind of provide companies that have very strict data requirements, levels of cybersecurity and physical security to make sure that they can, run their projects and essentially provide them with tools that they're going to need to compete in today's AI-driven markets.
Holy cow! So you are in cybersecurity too. So you're both part of my cybersecurity people as well as my AI people.
Yeah, I thought it would be kind of like a nice little, way to tie it all in together. Yeah. Now, we're very lucky because our partner data center, is Type 2 SOC 2 compliant, PCIe, all of those big government words. I know they've got the clients here, and we're really able to lean on them for the top of the line, both physical and cybersecurity needs for our clients that come to us and either require compute power for their own projects or want to create their own AI tools that they can use internally, essentially training those models and fine-tuning them on their own company's data. And that way they get their, best bang for their buck. And one of the worst things is, data leaking, as you know. So using these open AI solutions doesn't always provide the level of security needed for certain kinds of data, certain kinds of projects. So we've definitely identified, customers in law, finance, healthcare as sort of the primary people that are interested now to get on top of this. But really, at the end of the day, every company's got a payroll department. Every company's going to need AI. There's people coming out of school right now that got their degrees using LLMs to get that. There's companies out there training their staff to use AI internally. So the next step is essentially making sure that whatever you're using is secure and you're using your data to train that and not letting that data go out the door.
Okay, so help me out a little bit, because as an AI layperson, I mean, I know how to prompt ChatGPT enough to get into trouble, right? So I I don't understand. So if, let's say, I want to run my payroll, right? So I would use, I guess I'm as a small company, I would use, I don't know, ADP, right? Now, if I want to use some AI solution to run agents or run some stuff for me, right? Then I use AI companies online, and they do their work. I just pay them, right? So why do I need processing power? Also, let's say if I were a big company, wouldn't they just use OpenAI or Google Gemini? Like, why do I need to come to you to get processing power for my AI solutions when I could just go online and pay somebody for AI solutions? I don't get that. Can you explain to me what the business model is here?
Of course, of course. Now, there's always going to be those, the AWS and Azure offering massive amounts of compute power, and they've got a trench of services built in around them. But that's not always cost effective for people building their own models and that are concerned with this privacy. Even if you pay these companies to get the premium versions of their models, that data isn't necessarily being secured in the way that you need them to be. So that's the first thing. Now,
Okay,
as you mentioned,
before
yeah,
we go on.
yeah.
Okay, so am I getting this right? Um, because not only this is for my audience, I could say for the sake of the audience, but
Sure.
I'm an idiot with these things, so really it's for my own sake. Um, okay, so this is like not companies that would be using Gemini or ChatGPT. They would be building their own AI models, and they would be really needing hardware to run their AI models. Okay, so why would they build their own AI models? Can you answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as you know, things are moving so very quickly. People are creating AI for very specific use cases. So you mentioned accounting earlier, just a moment ago. So an accounting department would use a different kind of AI to keep track of, those payroll things than the art department might need, or the marketing department creating, images and that kind of stuff. And everyone, I'm sure at this point, has used, AI to polish an email.
Sure.
So what you don't want is your accounting department to have an email come in and say, I need to respond to this. I'm just going to copy and paste that into OpenAI. And then all of a sudden that information from your accounting department is going out there on the internet. If they're using the free version, like that's just gone. What
Uh,
you could be doing with that is if you have your own AI built internally inside of your computer company, all of your employees are constantly going to be training that model for your specific needs. And every company, and I don't need to tell you this, has specific needs, right? There's not a one size fits all. And a lot of what, Gemini and some of these other, out of the box models, they're not specific to needs of the companies. So by creating your own AI, running it on local compute power, you have access to a powerful tool that otherwise you'd be essentially training other people's AIs by
awesome.
giving
I
it out
get
to
it.
them instead
I
of,
get it.
making it as good as it could be for you and your team.
That makes sense now.
Yeah.
Okay. So company builds their own language model,
Yep.
right? It keeps getting trained, keeps getting better, very focused on that company's needs, very specific. Now they're like, okay, we got to do a lot of work with this. Where we're going to host it? Oh, let's put it in Azure. Let's put it in AWS. Or let's go to Neural Edge Solutions. Okay, what does Neural Edge Solutions provide that AWS or Azure, the big cloud providers, don't?
Absolutely. So we work with our clients to build not only the AI, like work with them to make sure that this model is being fine tuned and trained on their company data, but we also essentially create a bunch of models and silo them for the different departments. So we'll take, an Active Directory or like, Teams segments. And that way, the model that the accounting department has isn't the model that the marketing team has. And the marketing team can't ask, the accounting AI what the CEO's salary is because everything is essentially built for these specific uses.
So
that's
you have siloed language models.
exactly. And then let's say, one of our clients right now is very concerned with some of their project data being air gapped. So we would build them AI that essentially gets updated itself internally within the one system that they're working on a project, but they want a second AI that is connected to the internet, that doesn't know anything about their projects, but that they can use for polishing, for being able to create images,
Amazing.
being able to have chat, like, bot, just like everybody's seen at this point now, if you've been on, Grok or OpenAI or any of these, big AI things, you get a lot out of the back and forth. So if your AI knew who you were and what you were doing, you can only imagine how fast you'd be able to get, like, the answers that you need.
Okay, so you create the solution. So you're you build AI solutions, right? But you're also hosting those solutions, right?
Yes.
So you're hosting, but there's also all kinds of big cloud provider hosting solutions, right? What does your hosting solution do? That's how is it better than the big like Azure or AWS hosting?
Sure. One of the options that we can offer, because we have this, internal data center, is you can like actually own your own storage. So if you want to, and we've got clients that, get the warm and fuzzy feeling when they've put their dollars down on the storage units, and we put them in the rack right next to the H100 GPUs, and you've got the like fastest speed in the world from your data to the compute power to run the AIs. And it's, and we talk a lot about AI. Compute power can be used for a lot of great things as well, like video rendering for visual effects, for, any sort of big, powerful workload. And we are looking to expand, away from these H100s, which are very, very powerful, and get some other options that we can almost use as stepping stones for companies. So maybe you don't need that H100 right away. We're going to have, some other GPU options to kind of help people either get their testing done to move on to the H100s, or maybe your, workload is sufficient enough on a smaller piece of hardware.
Wow, amazing. So, and what about cost? Is it equal to, or in capabilities? You said that there's a very secure, siloed, right, systems, highly secure. You said it's more than what they could get from the big providers. But then what about the cost? Is it going to be more expensive because it's more specialized?
Actually, we are very, very competitive. We, so far have never had to charge more than any of these big providers. Now, you do have to also think that what you're paying for with AWS is like this big moat of services, right? Like they've got, people make a living training on how to use these systems. But what we, can provide is work with you to find out like what's important to your company and how to use this AI to enhance your creativity, your productivity, and at the end of the day, make all of our lives easier. Because like AI is a tool for that. It shouldn't be something people are scared of. It should be something that we're embracing because it's going to make us so much more efficient.
So you got this data center, you have like these super hardware solutions. It's not just an AI consulting organization because you're providing the full stack solution. The full stack solution. You design the application. You're AI developer. You got AI developers, and then you can host it and secure it, and ensure really really good performance at a much more like at a competitive price with the big providers. And you're like hand holding. The big providers, I'm sure, are just kind of like out there in the cloud, so to speak.
Yeah,
right?
we're really lucky to be able to, like you said, do some of that hand holding because AI is so new. It's not it's not wrong for companies to not understand how AI is going to fit into what they're doing. Like, off the bat, like, it changes so fast. We work with clients to make sure that they're getting the best bang for their buck and that everybody in their department is kind of using AI as efficiently as they can be for their own goals, and everyone's goals are differently. One of the nice things though is if someone has the technical expertise. So we're working with a financial tech company right now, and they've got some amazing developers. internally. And they're paying AWS to, build their apps and their projects on. And, I was chatting with the CEO, and we had a great conversation saying, like, like I've paid a lot out of for other projects in the past to AWS, and I was telling him about our solutions, and he seemed really interested in, having their own storage here in Canada, being able to migrate their projects over to us without any sort of, big issues during the development process, and then have this ability to scale with the amount of power that we are able to offer with the hardware. So all of a sudden, we're talking about not building their solution for them. They've got their own developers. We're just giving them access to these resources. So now all of a sudden they can like 10x their workload and,
Yeah.
build out these models internally themselves. So we're not like, we don't always have to be building the solution. Sometimes their teams have the solution and they just need the upgrade from the shotgun to the rocket launcher, and that's where we come in.
I love that. I love that. Upgrade from the shotgun to the rocket launcher. I love that. So when you were a kid, did you think, I want to build an amazing AI software and hardware company? Was that in the plans? How do I always think the people who are like in AI right now, either they've been in it for a long time or they're just like really like super flexible people who've like been able to just adjust and get going and hit the ground running. But what was the plan when you were a kid?
Well, yeah, being agile is a very good skill to
That's
have
the
in
right
life
word.
for sure. But yeah, no, when I was a kid, AI wasn't even on like something that you could kind of comprehend, but the internet existed in this very substantial, game-changing way. And I thought a lot when I was younger about being at like, the tip of the wave of the internet when it was like, taking over and changing everyone's lives. So I had that thought, and now I strongly feel that AI is this next wave, and I'm like riding it, and I'm right where I need to be
Mm.
for it. So in that way, it's nice to kind of think back, and maybe I missed that internet wave, but this AI wave, I get to be very much involved with. But no, when I was younger, I was very passionate about film and television production, and that was where I got my start here in Toronto, working at the Directors Guild of Canada on various television shows and films. Some of my
How do you
homes.
get into that? How do you get into television? Again, a lot of people really still want to go into
Yeah,
television and the movies, and somehow you actually got in there.
yeah.
That's the amazing part. You decide and then you do it. What happened that got you into the TV and movie? And
Well, I knew, a lot of people that have successfully broken into the film industry um, don't have another option because there's like almost a sickness to them. So from a very young age, I got my hands on a little camera and I was filming everything that I could. I was reshooting Stephen King, Stanley Kubrick's The Shining shot for shot. Like when I was like way too young, I was like running around writing my own stories, printing off screenplays, like learning script format before I ever knew that was something that you could do for a job. And then it
wow,
kind of really kind of came full circle for me in high school. I had an amazing communication technology teacher, Mr. Layton, and he was very inspiring. And I was doing very good in his class, and I wasn't really like, it didn't feel like I was working to get these grades that I was like, achieving in the class. So I felt really good about it. And, I think in grade 10 or 11 or whatever, they like come in and they say, "Hey, come to the colleges." And there was a bunch of colleges that were offering film programs, and it was the first time where I was like, "Oh, maybe I will be a doctor. Maybe I'll be a filmmaker." And I'm sure you can understand that was upsetting to my parents, but I, had this dream and I knew what I wanted, and I got into Sheridan College for media arts, an amazing program. And through that, I met an awesome teacher who, his name was Ross Leslie. He got me into the Directors Guild of Canada. And then the rest was kind of history. You work your way up. It's very competitive, but you get on a great crew that kind of likes you. I always tell this to, students, people that come to me for advice. I say, you got to be personable. You got to be someone people want to be around, because I've got jobs over people with more experience because you want to spend 17 hours a day with me versus like, a grump or something like that. So, everyone has a bad day, but like you try to, put your positivity forward, and it's paid
that's
off for
really
me.
great
So
advice.
Yeah, so I got to work on some amazing Canadian content, a show called Murdoch Mysteries. I got to work with the team on Schitt's Creek. I got to work on an amazing show called Orphan Black with, SAG and Emmy winner Tatiana Maslany. And she actually hired me as her personal assistant near the end of the run of Orphan
Holy
Black.
moly.
And that was amazing because I got to really help her achieve her goals. And if, anyone's listening and they haven't seen Orphan Black yet, check it out. It's an amazing show. Tatiana plays like 7 to 12 different characters in it. And it was an amazing technical show to be a part of because she'd be in these scenes with herself and we'd have these big crazy techno dollies and all this awesome equipment to pull that stuff off. So life was good, but film's
Okay,
exhausting.
so what did you specifically do? What were you doing?
So I was an assistant director. So
Okay.
I got my start as it's an assistant director is different than a director's assistant. And I did both jobs. The director's assistant works with the director to make sure his needs are met. So if he needs a coffee or his wife picked up from the airport, you go and do that. An assistant director, it's a team of 4 to 5 people on a film set, and they do everything from running the floor to organizing a call sheet, which is the schedule for the film,
Mhm.
to working with the first assistant to put background performers into the scenes. And then where I got my start was the trailer AD. And essentially you work where the cast come in and start their day and you put them through hair, makeup, wardrobe, give them their scripts, make sure they have breakfast, put them in a shuttle and send them off to set. And at the end of the day, after, these long, grueling 14, 17, 21-hour days, you sign them out and they go off and then you come back like less than 11 hours later and do it all again for 5 days. And it's rough, right? It's 5 a.m. on Mondays, coming home at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. So you can only imagine your whole week is shot and, it's tough to have friends and relationships. And it's a huge sacrifice a lot of crews make to make this art. So I was very grateful that I had this opportunity. Tatiana allowed me, open doors for me that I wouldn't have otherwise, including working at her talent agency during the off seasons. I got to work with agents. I got to work with writers. I got to work with producers, directors, actors, everybody. And then I was a little tired, and a friend of mine offered me a job working at Ubisoft Toronto doing video game development, particularly in motion capture studio work, which was very good because I could transfer a lot of my skills from film to the motion capture. And I was there working with people, the actors in their suits with all the dots all over them and the big data capture studio. And that was an amazing opportunity as well because I got to learn more about technology and how different departments in sort of software development and video game development come together to make a product. Did head mounted the camera technician work where we would track facial markers on the actors' faces and then spend a bunch of time at the end of the day entering all of that data in for the animators. And then I got kind of my big break there. I got my full-time Ubisoft contract on a game called Watch Dogs Legion, which is about a bunch of hackers in London, and you can play sort of anyone in the game that's walking around on the street. So we shot the cinematics 6 times, and I got to be involved in huge amounts of voiceover work. I got to go to Marina Del Rey, and they sent me down to the States to do some voiceover work at Side, and it was just this beautiful kind of dream all coming together of everything that I've worked for in film, everything that I've been passionate about in game development, and the game was amazing. And then just as the contracts were sort of ending and the world was kind of finding the next direction, it was March of 2020, the pandemic hit, and the brakes kind of hit on everything, and I had to figure out what I wanted to do next with my life.
Okay. So this is fascinating. I mean, fascinating because it says a lot about that word you said before, agile.
Yeah.
Someone who was agile. You're already agile. Without even knowing anything about AI, you were just going from one thing to the next, open to the universe, open to what the world had in store for you and the kinds of opportunities that would come to you. You were not a net no person. You wouldn't say no to opportunities. You were just you would just jump in. Where do you think that comes from? Because a lot of people they want stability. They just want to get a job and just kind of sit there and do the same thing over and over again, and they don't like change. You seem to at least from what I hear and also our previous conversations, you seem not only to be okay with change, you seem to welcome it. You seem to seek it in some ways. Where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, without going too far back into my dark and stormy past, I had times growing up of uncertainty where I didn't know, where I was going to be sleeping of a night and what I was going to do. And there was a lot of kind of, really interesting problems that I had to overcome in my life that allowed me to always kind of be looking forward and and be able to adapt and move and all of these kind of like really tough things that kind of like built me to be stronger and to know that there's always another option. There's always a door that will close, a window will open, that kind of thing. I feel very strongly about that, and no one's going to do it for you, right? Like if you want it all, like don't be halfway in, just like go full tilt, or like what are we doing here? So,
Okay, let's go into your dark and stormy past. When you tell somebody that, especially in a podcast, that there were nights that where you didn't know if you had somewhere to be or somewhere to sleep, that piques one's curiosity.
Absolutely, and I'm not going to sit here and claim I had the hardest upbringing out of anyone in the world, but like I my mom, who's no longer with us, was an alcoholic, and growing up there was difficult times. There were times where being around her was not an option, so having to at a very young age find solutions to that problem, sleeping on other people's couches, staying out as late as you can, like those kinds of things. It really kind of makes you realize what's important, like what you want in life, what makes you happy, because you know what it feels like to not be happy and not feel safe. So you have
Yeah.
these chances to make sure that you don't let that stuff happen to you.
And what I love about what you just said is the fact that you chose to take a positive route. Because you said that one of the secrets to your success is to just be pleasant and to be nice with people, right? What was the word you used to be positive or something to that effect? So I'll have to go
Yeah,
back
yeah. I was gonna say we'll have to roll the tape back.
roll the tape back, right?
Yeah.
But people wanted to be around you. They liked to be around you, and then thus you were able to. And I'm sure, and I know you work your butt off, and but doing so in a fun, positive way. And one would never know that your childhood was not fun or positive, right? In many ways, I'm sure you had some fun and positive times, right? But in many ways, you took that and you learned from it and you turned your life into a willful, decisive, positive experience because you decided to do that. That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. That's beautiful.
Of course.
I love it. I love it. I love these things because like I try to go deep in these. And so even my friends whom I've known for a long time, I get to know more about them. And it's just everybody's got such stories. It's a beautiful thing. So you got into film and movies, which everybody wants to get into, but you got into it. Oh, I lost your image.
Oh no, just give me one quick second. Let me see if I can fix that.
This will be edited out.
Yeah, good.
It's going really well, by the way. Thank you. Thank you for being
Wonderful.
open. Thank you for opening up. That's the whole point. I want to be like Oprah.
Back? Okay, great. Sorry about that.
So you went and got into the film industry. Everybody wants to get into the film industry. You actually got in there and did amazing things and worked with amazing people. Then you got into the video game industry. Everyone who doesn't want to get into the movie industry wants to get into the video game industry. And you did amazing things there as well. And but that's when you started with technology and so forth. So when you're working with technology and when you're doing video game work, why did COVID affect you? Wouldn't you be like in some dark basement somewhere developing video games?
Yeah, you'd think so. No, as you know, there was a lot of uncertainty. So there was just like a lot of like, and it's great to be involved in these industries, film, video game development. Like if you've got the passion for it, like it's the right place for you to be. But it's all contract work, right? Like you're constantly going after your next show, your next movie, your next game. So when the contract's up, unless you've got a deal worked out, you're looking for your next gig. And it just so happened that what was my next gig going to be when we're all like being told to stay at home? And I knew that I was still very passionate about film, and I knew that it all went back to my high school communication technology class with Mr. Layton. So I did what any person that was stuck at home during a pandemic would do, and I went online and I got my bachelor's of education through the University of Windsor. and I started teaching high school communication technology classes first from home because we were all still doing it digitally. And then I was like driving out to towns an hour away, 4 hours away, where they needed technology teachers badly because a bunch of teachers that were sitting on their retirements all retired during the pandemic because they weren't going to learn how to teach online. So all of a sudden, here I was kind of thrown into the deep end with all these high school students. But lucky for me, they were very impressed because I'd worked in film and I'd worked in video games and I had a lot to share life experience wise with them. And it was amazing. Like I love teaching. I could definitely see teaching some college classes, falling back on this one day if I, really.
If the AI thing doesn't work
Yeah, if
out,
the
or
AI, yeah, or
if
just,
the AI
or
thing goes away,
or just if I like made enough money that I didn't
just for
have
fun.
to work,
Good.
I would always want to teach because passing on that information,
Amazing.
and you always get to learn, right? Because you're a forever learner, right? Everyone is, but being a teacher, you're like really, you're learning from other teachers, you're learning from students, you're learning from like the faculty, librarians. Like it's a wonderful place to be kind of surrounded by knowledge and people that want to learn as well. And yeah, high school, that was tough on those poor students that I had because they had just spent like 2 years trapped in their bedrooms at home to finally be like thrown into, high school. Uh, it was nuts, but it gave me a big appreciation for what the next generation is like and what they're looking for, and they were using AI at that point to cheat, but it's not like, what I mean, like, okay, they called it cheating in the high school sense, but everyone in the universities and colleges were using AI to help with their research and write their stuff. Everyone at the in work companies are using AI to enhance productivity. So it was so new. How were teachers going to mark grades that were being written by AI? And that was like, yeah, a wild time to be teaching. But me, one of the best pieces of advice you've ever given me in our friendship together was focus, Dave. You do too many things. You spread yourself too thin. You bite off more than you can chew. You got to stay focused. And I took that advice to heart, and I made sure that Neural Edge was my top priority, and I've been able to accomplish so much. So I definitely appreciate that advice. But I hadn't got it at this point in the story. So I was teaching during the day, and I was coming home in the evenings, and I was making a video game with some friends, and I was starting my first company as an entrepreneur. And I kind of fell into it, meeting the right people who supported me through that. And we were trying to make virtual reality content, but we couldn't get the funding for that. And then we pivoted over to using our video game experience to create these AI avatars. But those were really hard to sell because the compute power was so expensive. And coming
Yeah,
back to
I wanted some of that,
AWS.
but it was
Yeah,
very
I know.
expensive. Yeah,
I
that's
know.
how
It
we
was.
met, because
That's
the AI
exactly,
avatar. That's right.
exactly. Yeah, we've been kind of pursuing that, but the compute power wasn't cost effective enough to kind of make that a viable business option. And that kind of is where the Neural Edge story begins its origin, which was, how does Dave get the compute power he needs for his project? And then how does he get enough compute power to kind of make a business on and provide solutions to other people? And the answer came from my co-founder and good friend, Mitch Pipard, who I had known for a while socially, but we hadn't like kind of sit down and talked business. But he had spent, well over 10 years in data center, like the MSP kind of world where they were providing solutions, like hands-on solutions, building all this internal stuff. And I came to him and I said, how do we solve this compute power? And he had spreadsheets and spreadsheets of numbers of like every different kind of model of GPU and how much power it takes and how much we could make off of it and how many clients we'd need to break even and how many, all of it. And he came back and essentially said to me, if we can get, you know, a substantial investment of $1 million, and we find ourselves a partner data center that would want to work with us, like we could make a business on this. We could essentially get this hardware and it can pay for itself by getting clients in, selling excess compute power online, like all these very creative ways to make a business. We started going around. So we started shopping around Canadian data centers because that's where we are. We're based out of Toronto here in Ontario, Canada, and we went on multiple tours of multiple data centers and finally found the right one for us. And it's called Core Data Center. They've got 2 locations here. The top highest end facilities you could ever imagine. And the team that runs the data center liked our idea so much, they came on as a partner, an investment partner, and they were able to connect us with the other investment that we needed. And the next steps were, um, lots of hoops to jump through, because you can't just snap your fingers and make this happen. Once we had the money and the investment, we had to work with Supermicro to make sure that we were going to do what we were promising with the chips. We're not allowed to sell that kind of stuff to China. We're not allowed to use them to create weapons, stuff like that, right? Because these are very powerful bits of compute. And then we had to work with NVIDIA Canada, who's amazing. We were working with Eric, who's the head of NVIDIA Canada, to become an end user for them. And hopefully going to continue working with them on some of their initiatives to help us accelerate and grow and scale here. And then we had to work with the border agency to get these things, because they're built in San Jose, the server chassis, and then we had to ship them here, and that was its own thing, getting them across the
And they're
border.
huge, right? I mean,
They
it's
are
not like
they're freight.
it's not like
They're
a chip you
huge.
get in an envelope.
No,
It's
no,
not,
no.
yeah.
There, if anyone knows what a server rack, it's a 4U chassis, like 200 pounds. I don't. Mitch would know all of the exact numbers, but there's two of them, and they're giant drawers for our data center. And they get air freight shipped to us, and they finally arrived. And you do all the hard work, plugging everything in and getting the physical work all racked and done, and then you got to do the firewalls and configure the networks, and make sure that everything is run. Then you do a big burn-in process to make sure that everything runs at full capacity and nothing's going to fail. And then you're ready to rock. And we've got this compute power. We're currently running projects on them, kind of some really impressive Blender renders I saw happening yesterday that were taking fractions of the time that they used to with our new hardware solution. And yeah, it's the best part about this is you get to work with so many different kinds of industries. Everyone has a different problem. Therefore, everyone you get to work with to create these very impressive solutions, creative solutions. So it's not just plugging in some wires at a data center into some hardware. We're working with our clients to provide them exactly what they need. So that's been a really fun part of this.
Okay, so
I
this
know,
is
I know, I know. I go on. If I haven't put
no, no,
anyone
no.
to
This
sleep
is
yet
like
that's listening,
amazing. This is amazing. Like you are a public school teacher, for God's sake.
yes, that's true.
Okay,
That's true.
so and you went from there to this, and
Yeah.
you said it in such a kind of a flowing way.
Yeah. Three
You made
years
it.
since I've been teaching to
Okay, so in 3 years,
two
and yet, but
business.
you made it sound so easy. Like, oh, we did this and this, and then we did this and that. But
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, at least from an entrepreneur standpoint, I really look up to you. I know I'm older, but I look up to you. I should look down on you, but I'm looking down to you, right? I mean, it's because you're younger, but I'm looking up to you because you make it sound easy. You're so like low key when you talk about this stuff, and I think when we hear stories like this, it's so easy to say, um, oh, I could do this, I could do that, right? And yes, there's the mechanical. We did this, then we did this, then we did this, then we did this. But I feel like in many ways it's all about, and I want to hear it from you, what it was. But I mean, I feel like it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of creativity. It's a lot of using your head. It's a lot of positivity. It's a lot of hope. It's a lot of it's going to work out no matter what. It's a lot of failure and setback. Um, that a lot of stories, you don't cover that. So we did this, we did this, we did this, but what did you fail at? So you
Sure.
failed probably way more times than you could count until you find a path, even in the last 3 years. But there's a lot of grit there. When I say all this stuff, what does that make you think of? What is it that kept you going or helped you make the right decisions?
Absolutely. You know, I'm very lucky that I've had so much support from family. Like my lovely wife supports me. She's, a sales executive at an insurance company, and without her having my back, like there's no way I would be able to accomplish what I accomplished. So, shout out to my lovely wife Gail.
Sure.
My friends and
Absolutely.
family, like my dad and my close group of friends, always kind of giving me that positivity. Mentors like yourself who've been around doing this entrepreneur thing before I've even considered doing it for myself, helping me guide decision making has been incredibly important as well. And then just surrounding myself with smart people, because I'm good at what I do, but I'm not good at everything, and making sure I have people that can support me at the data center level, people that can support me at the hardware level, software level, all that stuff. I'm very grateful with the ability to work with the people I want, and that's why I'm addicted to entrepreneuring and being, the captain of the ship, because I get to choose the best people, right? And I get to work with the people that I trust, that I, love and want to work with. And it's a great feeling when you all get to come together and accomplish something. And I really like leading the charge. So I found like kind of like my perfect place in all of this, and I wouldn't want to change it, which is why, like, when I see the success of this company, and I do think back on times that things haven't gone the way that we intended, or there's been failures. And I love failing, because if you can learn from the failure, it's like worth it, right? You have to get that mindset in, right? It's when you
What is
fail
it? The
and you
first
fail.
attempt,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
learning, right?
Yeah,
Fail is
exactly,
first attempt
exactly.
in
And then
learning.
if you fail multiple times, it starts feeling really bad, right? But you have to be agile too, right? Like I didn't know 5 years ago that I'd be an entrepreneur. I didn't know 3 years ago I'd be working in AI. I didn't know, like, a year ago that I'd have an investment of this magnitude and be able to be pulling what we're pulling off now. And it's so exciting because, we've been kind of keeping it on the down low a little bit. And over the last few weeks, I've been posting on LinkedIn because we got, the hardware set up and everything's kind of full steam ahead. The train's left the station, and the amount of people coming out of, previous jobs I've worked, and just parts of my life that, they're not up at the forefront of what I'm thinking about. I go, oh yeah, that was, I learned so much from, and, I should follow up with, and all of these things kind of come out because you're able to, you succeeded enough that you're able to tell people about your success, which is like, I think, a big part of, yeah, getting people to know it, which is why I'm so grateful you invited me here, because an opportunity to talk about what we've done is awesome. Yeah, and
Well,
to do
I
it with
think
a
it's
friend is
beautiful.
always great too.
Of course, yes. No, I love hearing this. Of course, I've been involved, not involved in, but I've been hearing the stories and hope supporting you, and loving how far you're getting. So you're just getting started. When did you turn on? When did the on button get, like, the switch on? Right? What date? When did you turn on the service?
So we've been running the servers now for 2 weeks. So it's
2 weeks.
essentially two
Okay.
weeks. Yeah. So
Two
it's
weeks.
2 weeks.
Now,
2 weeks
the way
since
we were
now.
talking,
Yeah.
if someone were, like, until now, they might have thought, oh, they've been around for years because they're doing this, they're doing that. In 2 weeks
Yeah.
since you've started and you've
I,
turned on the engines.
I technically started full time at this company, my company, in January, and it
Yeah.
took us, January to sort out all of the hoops we had to jump through. February, we were, building the box in San Jose. By March, it was, shipping, and then there had to be a few components coming in a little late before we could get them up and rocking. April, we were, had them arrive, all getting set up at the data center, and then yeah, we've been, you know, being able to actually get the compute power into clients' hands and do our internal tests, starting like, yeah, 2 weeks ago now.
Okay. 2 weeks.
Yeah,
You're like
two
this
weeks since
baby company.
that's, yeah. But we've got clients lined up, which is a really great thing,
Well,
and
that's the thing. That's the thing,
and
right?
and a
Are
plan
we,
to
what
sell.
kind of,
Yeah.
can you say how many people you're already working with on, like,
Yeah, so
major
we
projects?
we're onboarding two, in the current process of onboarding two clients with three more meetings set up.
Hmm.
So a good little, um, different, and everyone's got different needs and solutions, so it's kind of perfect. I had mentioned, we're working with some financial tech guys that have their own development power and capabilities, so that's been great because they're helping us discover certain needs that we know that everyone's going to have specific solutions required, but actually getting to sit down and talk and say, oh, within their company, they're actually working on multiple projects. So how do we accommodate multiple projects within this kind of umbrella of a service? So that's been awesome. And then the next company that we're onboarding has a phased rollout, which is also great because they're planning on bringing on, like, doubling their staff within this next year. So they're going to go from 50 employees to 100 employees. And we're working with them to phase one, get AI in the hands of department heads to help start fine tuning it. And then phase two, bring it out to the rest of their employees, 50, and then scale that to 100 employees as they grow. So that's been nice too, because we've really got to kind of figure out, and they don't have the development power internally that, like, they're working on their own projects. So we're going to, not that they couldn't, I'm sure, find very talented people that work there to do the job, but we're going to handle that for them and work with them to make sure that they're getting what they need.
That's incredible. When usually when a business is 2 weeks old, they're just sitting around, just like, you know what I'm saying? They're
Yeah.
like, please work with us. You've got people lining up. Um, Tell me about your plans for the future, what you'd like to be able to do. Like, what are your growth plans? I mean, people are lining up already. You know the business is there. It's only going to grow. And from the very beginning, when you had this idea, I was like, oh my God, you got to do this. Absolutely. And I was, I'm totally supportive. And hopefully one day, I could even be involved in it, and as a maybe in some way. We'll see. I don't know if I'm good enough, but we'll see. You work with really excellent people, so I don't know. But what are your thoughts in terms of growth? Where you want to go with this? I'm sure there's a lot of it that's going to be closer to that. So don't tell me like everything, but and what are some of the limitations that kind of might be frustrating for you?
Yeah, absolutely. We know that we have a plan to scale. So I think I'd already mentioned a little bit. We're going to get some stepping stones as well to get to the H100, because right now our offering is quite substantial. So by getting some, 4,000 ADAs, 6,000 pros are going to be coming out later this year. Those would be great to kind of offer more a menu of services for people that might not, again, maybe need that rocket launcher right away, right? So that's our first sort of plan of how we're going to scale out. We're very lucky in that this data center and the other one in Brampton is like water cooling ready. So like the next generation of GPUs are going to require different heating capabilities. So we've got that covered as well. So within the next 2 years, I know we're going to be scaling the hardware to accommodate the growth of the clients, right? So it's nice though that we can kind of see how the clients are coming in, and if necessary, kind of like ramp up that growth, and not go too fast if we don't need to. So that's been sort of in the works already as far as our scaling. Um, what I really want to do is prove this is successful here in Canada, and then be able to kind of grow this into other countries. Like, we talked about the States being, obviously the hub for AI engineering. There's so much amazing stuff happening there. There's no reason that what we're doing here can't be happening in the States, can't be happening in South America, can't be happening in Europe, can't be happening in Australia. So, what once we prove this out, and that this is like, a good financial way to create revenue, to provide security, provide these solutions, I feel like it would be very beneficial to take it global. And the more diversity we have to data centers around the world, the more clients have access to the power that we're talking about. Because you want to be kind of as close to it as possible, because the closer you are to the compute power, the faster the response time is. So,
Given
um,
the current political climate, um, between Canada and the U.S., I mean, I'm sitting here in the Washington D.C. area. You're in Toronto, and I feel we're more distant from each other than ever at this point, right?
unfortunately,
What's the
true.
yeah? What's the feeling like in Canada? I mean, aren't you guys getting ready to be our 54th state? Ha ha ha! But I mean, I don't know if I should cry or laugh about this, but I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, Prime Minister Mark Carney had a meeting with President Trump earlier this week, and he said, Canada's not for sale. And that's definitely been kind of echoed from the people that we've been talking to, on this side of the border. Um, just like concern, hey, where is our data currently, right? If it's at AWS, does that mean it's in America? Like, should it be here in Canada? Should it be on Canadian soil? So that actually has been, a positive part of some of the negative things that have come about all of this, with, like, the tariffs and trade war and whatever you want to call it. But there's been an amount of Canada coming together and being patriotic in a way that I haven't actually seen ever. Like, I have family like in Quebec and family in Calgary, and everyone kind of came together as this united front. And we had an election recently, and you kind of saw the way that that swung is this, Canada first kind of mentality. And there's politics like aside, Canada does need to be thinking about themselves, right? We can't just be relying on other like governments, other countries to be supporting us, right? Like we need to find ways to be, sovereign in our own, stand up on our own 2 feet. So there's been like a positive amount of talk of like, can we as Canadians like rally together and be stronger for all of this coming out now. I'm hopeful cooler heads will prevail, and that will continue a friendship that has existed for, you know hundreds of years between the two countries, and that there won't be anything standing in the way from people like you and I working together, because like you said, that's the dream, right? So I'm hopeful that nothing's too bad is going to happen on that front, but all we can really do is wait and see, and be positive,
Yeah.
maintain that positivity. But be
Yeah.
agile,
Be
just in
agile.
case.
Be positive but agile, right? Isn't
Positive
that
but
isn't that great
agile, yeah.
advice for
Yeah.
business people? We entrepreneurs, we business people, we're always trying to break borders down, right? Of all kinds, whether it's between nations or between peoples, because the less borders, the more opportunity, right? That's just simply the nature of things for us. And so it has been a bit scary for the business community, even though the business community by and large supported Trump. But they're now saying, okay, what's going on here? What's happening? Because we're putting borders up again. So the hope, of course, is that it's temporary. It's a part of a larger plan and so forth. And who knows? But that's the issue, right? Is the lack of uh, what's the right word? Certainty. The lack, we can't predict anything. There's no, and so business thrives in certainty. We got to be agile. We have to think on our feet. Um, let's say we get past this. What's the hope at some point where we kind of get back to and hopefully even strengthen the ability to work across borders? And that's the idea, right? That's at least Trump is what he's saying. He's like, I'm negotiating. This is the art of the deal, right? What's happening. Hopefully that is the case. Hopefully, right? And that there's a uh, plan behind the madness. But uh, once things open back up, first of all, what are the limits now that you feel? If let's say you wanted to expand into the U.S. today versus later, and does it make you think, okay, maybe I'll delay some decisions, or maybe I'll wait? What are those limits? What are those concerns? And then let's say if those were to go away, uh, what would be your plan to try to expand into the U.S.?
Well, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to finding a good data center that knows, what we're trying to pull off and wants to work with us on that, like we found here. Um, Everywhere kind of like gets their power from different places, like globally, right? Like, right, we're very reliant on hydroelectricity in Ontario, and other places in Canada. But and I know there's a lot of other opportunities for power. So that's one of our main, to get technical, our main thing would be looking at power. Where's the best power opportunity for us to, grow within the states? Again, assuming everything's open. Now, if we were, existing in the states and we were working within the states with American employees and stuff like that, there's, not a lot of the problems because it's all internal, right? It's all tariff wise. Now, I don't know if they're going to let a Canadian come over there and be a part of a company. I haven't looked quite into that yet. But there's, no part of me that doesn't believe that this is an idea that will be happening. We're just doing it right now, but everyone's going to need AI. Everyone's going to need their own solutions using AI, and these out of the box ones that exist right now are great, but they're not going to cut it forever, right? Once people
Mm.
see what it's like to have an internal, fine-tuned, on your own company data trained AI, there's not going to be, you know, people just wanting the off-the-shelf one. Now, I say that, but I should say as well, we are working with companies that have specific data privacy requirements. Some of them even to keep the data within Canada, like some medical companies, some even within the province of Ontario. So there's certain things. I have a friend, good friend of mine from film school all the way back at Sheridan. He was an audio guy. He's now a real estate agent, and he doesn't need to be concerned with a secure AI because all of the house data is public record, right? And right, so he can use OpenAI as much as he wants, and it's not a problem for him. So you got to ask yourself, okay, well, at what point is this right for me, and at what point do I need to be concerned of where the data ends up? And if there's concern here in Canada, there's concern everywhere. There's concern on every continent. There's got to be concern in America too, right? So someone has to step up and say, hey, we're going to do this right. We're going to do this ethically. We're going to find a way to make sure that the people that need the compute power are getting what they need.
Amazing.
Yeah,
In many ways, I think, you know, from a very unbiased perspective, I feel like some of these tariffs are kind of changing the decision making and say, okay, maybe it needs to be made in America or done in America internally. And I don't think there's any rule against someone coming from another country and building something inside America, right? Whether it's manufacturing or so. And what you're saying is, okay, maybe we need to basically um, duplicate this model, right? And put it in the States for American companies and do the work there, which I feel like is probably the purpose of all this stuff, right? So in fact, you'd be working along with it. And a lot of international businesses will be most likely starting to build more capacity, whether it's manufacturing or service based or hosting, right? Inside the US, whereas before it might have been outside, right? And that I think that's some of the purpose of this. Now, we could do without all the, bravado, right?
sure.
But I think in some ways there is some of that thinking. Again, trying to be unbiased here and hoping for the best, right?
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying too is what we're hearing here in Canada is, hey, let's be strong, let's be patriotic, let's get our data here where we know it is.
Hmm.
I can't imagine if you make that pitch in America and you say, hey, let's keep our data on American soil. Let's make sure that the compute power that we're getting is from American power, right? Like it makes sense, right? So there's no reason that it doesn't work. And same anywhere. Like name a place, right? Like we've got friends like down in Panama. Why would they not want their data and their stuff there, right? Like
In
so
Panama,
there's
right? Yeah,
in
yeah.
Panama.
And,
So
and so I feel like a lot of the purposes, a lot of the clientele that you're going to be working with are that they want their center, their data close to them,
yeah.
under control, pure, all kinds of limitations around it. And you probably work with the military as well. Like the Canadian military probably has some need for things like that as well. And I'm sure they're using already vendors, but as you grow, you could just see a whole lot of capabilities there. We, in fact, met at a U.S. military conference, if you remember. So there's all kinds of functionality there that you could do. I mean, it's just so exciting. I really do believe very heartily in what you're doing. In so many ways, I think as hopefully a budding investor myself, the old adage is so true that investors don't necessarily invest in ideas; they invest in people. So almost like I would invest in what you did no matter what you did, right? But now you're doing something really cool anyway, which is awesome because the idea is awesome. The execution is amazing, flawless. And the person is you, which is like, holy cow, I would totally work with you anytime. So I think you're definitely a win for any investor and you're just getting started. Just two
I
weeks
know.
old.
I
I'm
know.
so happy for you.
Just
Congratulations,
happening.
Dave.
Thank you. And
Congratulations.
to
You totally deserve it.
Yeah, well, to bring it back to your like kind of original thesis here, with AI moving so fast and like the hardware being a good play, we say picks and shovels. We say, like, would you rather be like looking for gold, or would you rather sell the pans, right? To pull them out of the ocean. And the hardware allows us to do the other stuff, right? Like having the own hardware to build the solutions on top of, like that's
Yes.
why we can do something as strong as we can as far as our value and the offering that we have. And we get to then be part of that wave of AI constantly changing. So as these new models come out, it's like, oh, Llama 4, like let's see how oh, it's designed for an H100, it's perfect. Like, Llama 4 Scout, like in we go, and like how strong can that be? So as new things happen, we're constantly able to test, like on the tip of the spear in so many great ways. And yeah,
One
we're
last
looking
question.
forward to. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and this kind of follows exactly what you were saying. But what about the chip itself? So the H100 is a chip. I mean, again, it's not a tiny chip that you kind of drag out of your
No,
phone.
yeah,
It
it's
is a
almost like the
big,
size of almost like a VHS tape kind of
yeah,
size, like
it's
big,
big, which is
thick.
huge
Yeah,
for a
yeah, yeah,
chip. I mean,
yeah,
it's huge. I mean,
yeah.
because we're used to like little chips.
And if you can picture like
So,
10 of those stacked together, like in a big
mhm.
drawer, like that's
Right. So that's an
that's what we're talking.
investment, right? But then
Yeah.
there's new chips coming out all the time, and these things are going to get old pretty quickly. Do you have a system in place or a business model in place to also upgrade your hardware?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. Now we're very lucky in that the higher end GPUs do retain quite a bit of their value, which I think is
Mhm.
why the investors, could see such a value in a project like this. Because if everything goes bad, you've got this like asset that you could sell if you needed to. But we're not going to do that because the plan is to constantly scale up. So you can run these things for like a while, like years. Plan is to always kind of be ahead. So Mitch and I were at GTC, NVIDIA's conference in San Jose,
Mhm.
in the middle of March, and we got to see what this next generation of chips are going to look like, and their requirements as far as the water cooling and power density and VRAM and all of it, all like how it all fits together. And even just like new rack designs and some of the big, huge innovations, all of the companies are kind of like working together to make. So we know what's coming down the pipe, and we know that to get in line for some of this hardware, we're going to have to be a substantial player in the company, right? Like be working with NVIDIA to make sure that we get our hands on the next things. But those next things, the Blackwell series, are going to be, needing water cooling. So we are prepared for that at our other facility. And um, there's just so many options because, right now the density that we're able to kind of like put in the rack that we're currently using like did not exist years ago, right? Like it is very much cutting edge as far as how it all comes together. So yeah, I'm very lucky that I'm working with my good old friend Mitch, who is really interested on even like a personal level on the hardware side of things. So he's always like reading articles. He's always like listening to the podcasts. He's listening to, the reports of what the new next generation are going to come out. And there is something to be said about letting that first kind of like run of them go out and then get in on the second run, because if there's any issues, like
Sure.
there's been a
Yeah.
bit of work done. So it's about timing, and we're lucky because we get to kind of see how much compute power our clients are needing before we have to make a decision on how we want to scale. So there's that. And then if we get to a point where no one's using the hardware, we'll sell it because someone out there will use it.
Yeah. Amazing. David, it is always, always such a pleasure to hang out with you. You're an incredible individual. I know you're doing well already, but I know you're gonna kill it, and you're just gonna be so successful. And of course, I'm gonna be watching the entire time. Thank you for your time, and I'm gonna get your information put in the comments so people can reach out to you. Your website, all that stuff. But I think it's just such a pleasure to hang out. So thank you for your time, and come back when you're a gazillionaire, man. Please remember us little people, and I would love to have you. I don't know, as you're my guest number 5, maybe guest number 25, when you're like, you know, just taking over the world. So very
Absolutely.
happy.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Ben. Thank you so much for having me, and I'll be back. You just ask. I'll be right here.
Awesome. Laters.
All right. Have a good one.
That's a wrap on today's episode of Tech Tales with Ben Tchoubineh. We hope you enjoyed the stories and insights from some of the brightest minds in the tech industry. Make sure to like and subscribe, leave a review, and join us for more inspiring tales from the world of technology. Stay curious, stay connected, and as always, thanks for tuning in. This is Ben Tchoubineh, signing off. See you next time.